All right, so let's see. This is going to be about Testrace. This is the fundamental Uberstate. In Chaos. My newest plando. So basically, the way that this is going to work. Ooh, this chair is squeaky. So let's see. Let's start with what exactly Testrace is. So Testrace, unlike a lot of other Uberstates, is actually a value. It can go from anywhere from negative 2.17 billion approximately to positive 2.17 billion. And I might be slightly off with that number, but the number is arbitrary. That's negative to positive, not plus minus. Either way, you get the idea. The idea is that it can be pretty much any value for all intents and purposes, and that it's actually a number and not a true or false. So why is this important? Well, in seed file syntax, we can write that we want to set Testrace, and Testrace's Uberstate is 44964 50634, and yes, I do have that memorized. And we want to set that. Now it is an int. That's what it means when it has a value between this. That's the type of Uberstate that it is an int. So we want to set that int to this value. And so what this does is it sets Testrace, which I'm going to abbreviate with TR, to this value, okay? So that's what this line does. Now there's another type of seed file syntax. So 634 int. You'll see it looks very similar, except there's a plus sign. Now what this does, let's get rid of that, is this actually increases Testrace by a certain amount. So it's good to know the difference between these two because they're both actually used in Chaos. This one is much less common, but this one is the one that we're going to be focusing on. This also works if you have the same syntax and minus that number. It decreases Testrace by this value. So anyway, let's begin. Another important note is that Testrace always starts at 0. So when you load up a seed for the first time, again, this only applies to when you load up a save for the first time, like starting from the beginning of Inkwater Marsh. Testrace will be 0, okay? And this is true for any int, with very few exceptions. Testrace will always start at 0. So let's say that player 1, right? Let's say player 1 starts the seed, goes right, and goes to pick up the first EXP on the right. So just to the right of spawn, there's an EXP. Let's say they go there first, and then afterwards they detour to go back to the left. That should be goes back to get the rock health cell on the left. Okay? Let's say player 2 starts the seed and does the traditional movement. So he goes to the left, and rock HC is first in that case, and then goes back to the right. And picks up the EXP second, okay? Now, normally, under any normal seed, these would give you the same things, right? Like, let's say there's a health cell and an energy cell. Well, then you'll just get an energy cell and a health cell, right? It won't do anything different. Chaos does not follow that rule. And here's why. So, let's say, actually, let me use black marker. So let's say that on the first EXP, right? So on the first EXP, that would be 21786 49485 for the first EXP. 21786 means Inkwater Marsh, 49485 is the first EXP. Let's say that it actually increases Testrace. Again, that's a 4. This is the Uberstate for Testrace, and it increases it by 1. Now, let's say that there are some lines that say that on, it's a value trigger, so let's say that on Testrace equals 1, so whenever Testrace equals 1, or yeah, I messed that up. This should not be a line. Let me try to fix it. And that, so that equals 1, right? It gives Blaze. So 2115 is Blaze. And what else does it do? It gives double jump. And the last thing it'll do is take away wall jump. How about that? So this is what happens when Testrace lands on 1. Let's put it that way. So player 1, in that case, since Testrace starts at 0, the first thing that will happen is they'll go get the first EXP, and then Testrace will go up by 1. So at this point, Testrace equals 1, and what will happen is they'll get their wall jump removed. So they start right here with sword, wall jump, and that's it. So at this point, they get wall jump removed, so they no longer have wall jump, but they're given blaze and double jump, right? So they have sword, blaze, and double jump. Now note here that Testrace equals 0, and here that Testrace equals 1, okay? This makes sense, right? Because that's exactly what happened here after collecting the first EXP. Because the first EXP increased Testrace by 1, and so 0 plus 1 is 1, so you land on these. Okay? So now let's talk about the Rock HC. So the Rock Health Cell is 21786 60210. Again, memorized. And let's say that that increases it by 4. Now, I don't actually remember what happens on when Testrace equals 4, so let's just make the values up. Let's say that you lose grenade. You get bash. How about that? And let's say you get a teleporter. Let's equals 4. Teleporter is 5. And let's say you get the Wellspring TP. How about that? So then player 2 is going to get, they're going to start with sword and wall jump. And they're going to get grenade. Removing grenade does nothing because we don't really have grenade. So they're just going to get bash, or they're going to keep their sword and wall jump. They're going to get bash and Wellspring TP. Right? And note that Testrace equals 4. Okay? So now, let's go over to the backside here. At this point, player 1 is going to go to the rock hell cell. Right? So they've already picked up the first EXP, and then they go back to get the rock hell cell. Right? So what's going to happen? So at this point, player 1 has a Testrace value of 1, and they have sword, blaze, and double jump. Right? Now, Testrace is going to go up by 4, right? So Testrace is going to equal 5 at the rock hell cell. Because if you recall, the rock health cell increases it by +4. So let's define what happens when Testrace equals 5. So at Testrace equals 5 equals 5, you get flap. Okay, sure. Equals 5, you get wall jump back if you didn't have it. And one last thing. You lose double jump. Sure. Sure, why not? So let's see. What's going to happen? Well, they're going to get all of these rewards. So they're going to have sword. They're going to have blaze still. Double jump is going to get removed and replaced with wall jump. And they're going to have flap. Okay? Now what about player 2? Now player 2 went to the rock hell cell first, and now they're going to the first EXP. So that's going to increase it by 1. So remember that their test race value was at 4, and it's going to increase by 1. So their test race value is going to equal 5. Now player 2 had sword, wall jump, bash, and wellspring teleporter. Let me make it so that you can see. Bash and wellspring TP. Just like that. And because their test race is now 5, they get these rewards. So now they have sword, wall jump, which if it's already given, that doesn't do anything. Remove double jump. We don't have double jump, so that doesn't do anything. So we still have bash. We have flap now. And we have wellspring TP. So as you can see, these two skill sets are completely different. Two completely different results from the same two pickups. Just 100% dependent on the order in which you pick them up. And this is just the first two pickups. Already giving you two different results. And this basically continues for every single pickup in the game. So that's how the RNG works, and that's why two playthroughs will rarely ever be the same. Even if you go for the exact same pickups, also, even if you go for them in the exact same order, there are other things that can also change the value of test race. Like, for example, the falling portal in Willow's End. Depending on when you trigger that, it might advance test race. So other factors besides pickups can also advance test race and give you different rewards. So I hope that this makes sense.